Hello, ladies. Welcome back for another powerful session on the Women Thrive Summit. Today is day 5. I can't believe how quickly this week has gone by. I hope you have enjoyed every single session. And today we are having a conversation with Claudia Spahr. Hi, Claudia. How are you?
Hi, Raimonda. Great to be here. I'm in my field of flowers.
Where are you joining us from, Claudia?
I'm actually in the south of Spain right now. So in the same country as you. We've had a lot of rain, haven't we?
We have. This week has been very stormy, very unusual for our weather. But you have just come back from travels. Tell me a little bit more.
I have just come back from South America, and I was in Argentina and Peru. So I'm going to weave in some of the things that I saw and learned in Peru about leadership, specifically reciprocal leadership, reciprocity, and this kind of feminine leadership, integrated, embodied leadership that I've been studying for quite a long time and implementing in my own business. So that's what I'm going to focus on.
I'm very excited. Well, in a previous talk, we talked about wealth and building sustainable wealth, generational wealth. And I think leadership and cultivating that leader's mindset, I think directly also links to not only just financial abundance, but also freedom for us as women. So I'm very excited to have all of you joining us. So we have Alexis, Ellen, Loho, Kari, Nura, and I'm sure other ladies will be joining throughout. So today we're talking about how to cultivate female leaders' mindset. And I'm very excited to invite Claudia. Claudia has been in my network for probably a year now, and we have been actually on a training together with Mr. Les Brown. That's how we initially connected. And I just knew that our missions aligned, our values aligned in terms of how we wanted to make an impact. And not only she's a powerful speaker, but she is a fantastic leader as well in her own community. So a little bit about Claudia Spahr. Claudia is an award-winning businesswoman, multiple best-selling author, and leadership mentor. She is the founder and CEO of HolyMama, where she has been creating safe spaces and retreats for mothers and their children since 2013. Claudia has trained Holy Mamas, mama facilitators in over 20 countries now. Claudia, it's a joy and it's an honor to have you on our platform and talking on your subject. I'll hand it over to you and I look forward to hearing your talk.
Thank you for the intro. So wealth is a very important part of this talk as well, because if we don't have wealth as women, we aren't able to live the lives that we were meant to live. And part of the mindset of a leader is to be extremely resilient. And if you listen to some of the talks this week, you'll have heard that, you know, we need to be so resilient because the world around us is still catching up. I like to use this metaphor. Think of it like we're fish in water. We're fish in the ocean. We don't realize we're surrounded by water because the water is the only thing we know. Because if you're a fish, you don't go on land, you're in water. So we're surrounded by this system that is very male dominated. It's a patriarchal system. And as part of this talk, I'm going to give you a brief geek insight into what I have been studying, partly from this book, Joseph Campbell, The History of the Goddess, The Mysteries of the Feminine Divine. And I will tell you a little bit about my own story. So as Raimonda mentioned, one of our mentors is the awesome Les Brown. And if you've never heard of him, look him up. He was just incredibly game-changing, especially in the 70s and 80s. One of his quotes, which I'm going to borrow, is, when you fall down, make sure you fall on your back. Because if you can look up, you can get up. So I'm going to take you back when I fell down as low as you could possibly fall, as a mother, as a wife, as a woman. I had everything taken away from me. And this is, by the way, 3 months 3.5 months before the pandemic started. So when the pandemic started, I was like, bring it on. I have already lost everything. How could I possibly lose anything more? How could anything possibly be worse than this? But when you fall down, it is the depth of your fall, I believe, is directly related to your highest potential. So those of you here, if you just write in the chat, and I'll have to put my glasses on to read it. If you write in the chat, when you fall down, the deeper your fall, it is directly related to your highest potential. And when you get that, and you realize that transforming that looking for that gold, looking for the silver in the cloud, that is where you need to go. That is the direction to head in. So I've been working in transformation for 15 years now. I used to be a journalist. That's actually my free gift, not my free gift, my giveaway, media training. So I was in broadcast journalism as a foreign correspondent for over a decade. And then when I was kicked out of patriarchy, I like to call it, because that's how it was, I went on a journey where I got into the health and wellness world, and I started doing retreats. So I've been doing that for 15 years. So let me get to the low point, because we all like a good transformation story, don't we? So I was standing outside my house. It was about a month before Christmas. The Christmas tree had just been put up, and I was looking through the window and I couldn't get in. The reason why I couldn't get in was because the locks on my doors had just been changed by my ex-husband. We'd been going through 2 years of very contentious divorce. Now, anyone who's familiar with domestic violence knows there are many, many faces. It's not only physical, it can be emotional, it can be psychological, and there is a thing called coercive control. At the time, I did not know that is what it was. I only found out about this label after all this had happened to me. Now, you can say I had a good basis to stand on because I already had a virtual aspect to my business. Now, this is very important. This is something I want for all of you. Every woman should have the ability to have a part of her business that she can run while she's doing other things like caring for a sick child, getting divorced, paying for the divorce, and also just being able to take some time out, because we give to everyone. That is, the mother is the backbone, the woman, and even if you're not a mother, you have that in your DNA to nurture others. So we are the backbone. That is just built into our DNA. So if we don't look after ourselves, and that goes from self-care to looking after your bank account, as my grandmother says, I'm Swiss, you need to have your Frauengeld. There's even a word for it in German. It's woman's money. And it's like every woman needs to have that. So just imagine if I had been, let's just take an extreme, on drugs or about to go on drugs. I mean, that's something that can push you over the edge. If I'd have been more mentally unstable than I am, or than I was, God knows what would have happened. So locked out of my home, what I had to do was I had to look up. I had to look at myself in the mirror, and I had to go, this is your opportunity. It was like, I like to call this my Google Earth moment. It's like everything zoomed out and I saw myself from all sides. I saw my past and I saw my future. And I went, you are not gonna do this to me. I'm not gonna fall on my face. So what did I do? First of all, of course, I had to take some deep breaths. And I had to become even stronger. I had to become more resilient than I could possibly imagine. I had to make sure that I had an alternative home, that I had my own, that I could pay my own rent, and that I could fulfill the times that I was allowed to be with my own children. Now, when we talk about leadership mindset, I'd like to bring it together with 3 C's That's the beginning of my first name, Claudia, and 3 R's. That's the last letter of my surname. Resilience, reciprocity, and right relationship. So as Ramonda said earlier, I was just in South America, and I was in Peru because I have been studying the lineage of the Quechua. These are the descendants of the Incas, the incredible high culture that was around in South America for thousands of years. They built incredible temples. They had crops. They were even able to do brain surgery. So in colonial times, when the Spanish went and just took over South America and took a lot of the gold and extracted and plundered, and I mean, the kind of thing we still have going on with fracking, but this is all something we are now really learning more and more about. When that happened, the Incas were, well, partly they got sick from the diseases that were brought over, partly they were converted and they had their culture taken away, and partly they were just killed. So those who survived and who kept the tradition alive went up to over 4,000 meters. And those conditions are so harsh. I was there myself. It was cold. I have never been so cold in my whole life, and I'm Swiss, I'm used to the mountains. It is so cold and harsh, the weather changes, it's windy, and because of the high altitude, you get very breathless. So your heart actually has to expand, your lungs have to expand so that you can pump the oxygen through your body. So these conditions were too harsh for the Europeans. And this is how they kept their lineage alive, the Quechua. And a lot of it is an oral tradition, and a lot of it is in the fabrics, a lot of really complex spiritual connections, and a lot of the nature around them they have put on their textiles, really incredible textiles. So the reason why I mention them is because they have these principles that functioned very well. And this is where I see leadership going. One of them is right relationship. So this is right relationship to the environment, to the land, and the relationship to the land informs the relationship between people. The other one is reciprocity. So a good leader is just an expression of the collective. A good leader is an expression of the collective. A good leader isn't a star who stands there and goes, worship me, or a megalomaniac, or we have so many of those leaders still, someone who delegates in a way that is very hierarchical, that is telling people what to do without including them in the conversation. So reciprocal leadership, and this is the mindset of a feminine leader. And this is why I'm speaking to you, because women, we do this more naturally. I'm not saying men can't do it, because they certainly can, but women find this much easier. And I'm obviously using polarities here because we're here at a women's conference. And this is something I have seen, this is something I've experienced, and this is something that I practice daily, monthly, yearly with my team when I do retreats and when we work together. We have with circle, we have every day, we have a check-in so that everybody gets to share, especially the quiet ones, because the quiet ones are often really good observers. But if you're in a classic meeting where everyone's trying to talk over each other, the quiet ones don't get a chance, when they're actually the ones that might have exactly that important point that is going to shift everything, that is going to bring more profit in, that is going, because they see the whole. Then another element of reciprocity is understanding that each person is needed. We are unique individuals. Everyone's voice counts. And this is when we talk about inclusivity and diversity, which have become buzzwords, thankfully, this is what it actually looks like, because this is what's needed for a healthy, thriving ecosystem and community. So this is what I saw in the Andes, and I'll give you a brief example of what happened. in this village where I was up at nearly 5,000 meters, the president of the community had allowed gold miners to come up on their motorbikes, charge up and start extracting gold from their sacred mountain. Now, you've got to understand as well that these, in Spanish, they call them originario people. So they're like First Nations, indigenous people to the country, have actually, they're the custodians, the custodians of the last places of biodiversity. So the 80% of the planet's biodiversity is protected by these different indigenous tribes that are actually, there's only 20% of them left. So that I find is shocking. So they are there protecting the mountain from being plundered. Now, what happened was this chief, he backhandedly got some cash, right? Corruption is everywhere. And in governments, it's a slow system. But in this local community, what they did was they said, right, this is not going to happen. He is not the expression of the common good of our community. And he was basically pushed out of the village. He couldn't live there anymore. And they were able then, of course, also to stop these miners from going up. So I just think that's a great example of how community and how a leader needs to be constantly in check with the will of the community, the team you're working with, and that is the principle of reciprocity. So we've had right relationship, reciprocity, and then resilience. So resilience is this example of how resilient these people from Peru were by going up to this altitude where they literally were able to survive. And how do we translate that into our own lives? So resilience is one of these things that I also believe that women have inherently, because we're made to give birth. Even those who haven't given birth, or those who have had cesareans like me, not by choice, but we have this resilience to endure incredible pain and know that there's going to be an end to it, that it's not going to last. We don't start off a pity party. We literally just go through it. And we know birth is another wonderful metaphor of, and this has come up before in this summit, of trusting the process. Because when you go through birth, you go through this portal, you don't know how it's going to look. You don't know exactly the script you have. Sometimes you just have to throw it overboard and trust the process. And at the end of it, in 99% of cases, you do get a baby. Now, I mean, it is trusting the process. And another thing I wanted to, bringing us back to this story of when I was locked out of my own home and I had to completely start a new life and buy new furniture and get everything new and deal with the grief of my breakup and deal with the grief of not being able to kiss my children goodnight every night, which is probably one of the worst things that can happen for a mother. I had to literally pick myself up. And then when the pandemic started, there I was with an events-based business, right? I do retreats. I've been creating multiple six figures from retreats for a good 10 years now. And it was like the carpet was pulled out under me, or I was already flat on my back and then I had the carpet pulled out. So this is where the 3 C's come in. You need creativity, ladies. You just need to go, okay, let's just imagine how things could be if I did this. Imagination is the basis. First, we have to imagine something before we can build it. Like an architect, we imagine how it looks. We feel how it could feel. We smell, and we all have different attuned senses, but we smell how it could smell. And that's like the Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs that you need to follow. And getting into your feeling is a good way, because sometimes when we're using our heads, it's not as effective as using our bodies. So creativity. So I got creative. I had all the tools. I'd already had an online training program. That's my retreat leader certification that I've been running for 2 years. I knew how to more or less do the back end of a website. I had a team in place who could support me, and I created three new products during those first months. One was the Broadcast Your Presence, which is the media course that is part of the giveaway. Another was the 40-day sadhana practice, which I basically already had the videos, the wellness videos, and I just batched them together and I worked. I mean, this doesn't always happen overnight. It is like slow, organic growth, just consistency. There's another C word for you. Just consistently stay at it. And then the third is the Leadership Radiance, which is actually what you have as the 10% off. The other third C is collaboration. Collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. That's what we're doing here. It leads to connection. That's another C. And what I'd like to do now, I'm just going to put on my glasses so that I'm going to take us very briefly, because I have a wellness background. I can't get away from that. I want to take us very briefly to a connection with ourselves. And then I'm going to give you some more examples of why we are like fish in water, and why it's so important that women lead in their way, not in any way that has been presented to them by their upbringing or by their education, but just trusting your body. So what I'd like you to do is, if you're sitting, I'd like you to widen your hips. And we always have this thing about women like, oh, my hips are too wide. Our hips are made this way for a reason. If you're standing, I'd like you to stand in a wide warrior stance. And if you're sitting, I'd like you to lift your beautiful, juicy buttocks. So it's like bring your hands under your buttocks and give them a lift, so that you are in this position where you're slightly arched back. If it doesn't, do this only if it's comfortable. I like to think of it like these fertility figurines, which I'm going to show you a picture of in a few minutes. Just imagine that take yourself back thousands of years ago, when the earth was honored, when the feminine was honored, when fertility was seen as something remarkable, the mystery of life. And just take your hands and smooth them over your thighs. You might want to stroke the inside of your thighs, the outside of your thighs, like a gentle caress. It could be the loving caress, like a motherly, nurturing caress, or it might be slightly cheeky, erotic caress, just stroking yourself and feeling how incredible your body is. Your body does miracles every day. It gets you up, it digests your food, your cells are just incredible. And then when you're ready, bring your hands to your womb. And if we have any men listening to this, you have also a center of power, which is your hara, your tantium. It's below your navel. And if it feels comfortable, just cupping your womb, stroking your beautiful belly, allowing it to really, if you've got jeans on, unbutton your jeans, allowing it, giving yourself that space, taking up space, and taking a few deep breaths into your belly. You might want to make some sounds. I like to call them sacred sounds. They're like your sounds of pleasure, your sounds of comfort. It might be a nobody is listening. And even if you're in an office, it's probably so noisy anyway. So just taking a moment to really bring your energy down into your belly, taking a few more gentle breaths, a few more deep sighs, and just feeling really, really grounded, and knowing that you can return to this any place, anywhere. to feel safe, to feel centered, to feel in your feminine power. Just resting a moment with that, and then slowly, slowly, when you're ready, give yourself a stretch. You might want to give yourself a yawn. You might want to slowly, slowly open your eyes. So I have got some pictures here. Let me just see if I can. I hope you can see them. Can we see the pictures? Can somebody write in the chat? Not that I can see the chat, because the problem when you start a slideshow is that can say, I don't know, Raimundo, are you able to unmute and let me know if you can see the slide?
Yes, thank you. Perfect.
Okay, great. So I'm going to whiz through this because I don't want to geek you out too much. I'm going to record a version of this. So if anybody wants it, then please let me know. So as we said, or as I said about the we're like fish in water. So this is the history from a different perspective. This is not the history you learned at school. So being a woman in a man's world, we are still unfortunately in a man's world, but hopefully that is changing and we will have more equality step by step. We're getting there. And I do see this as a wave, and this summit is part of that. We are in a different place than we were 10 years ago, and we will be in a different place 10 years from now. And those of us who have children know that children also, they are born into a completely different world with a mobile phone in their hands. This is taken from a best-selling book by Yuval Harari. Yuval, I don't know if you can see this here, if my thing is covering it. Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. So if you see there in the top left, different societies adopt different kind of imagined hierarchies. Race is very important to modern Americans, but was insignificant to medieval Muslims. Caste was a matter of life or death in medieval India. Whereas in modern Europe, modern Europe, it is practically non-existent. One hierarchy, however, has been of supreme importance in all known human societies, the hierarchy of gender. People everywhere have divided themselves into men and women, and almost everywhere men have gotten the better deal, at least since the agricultural revolution. So we're going to go back before the agricultural revolution. But before we do that, here are some examples. So this is not just a Western phenomena. It's not just a phenomena in Latino culture. It is everywhere. In China, for example, foot binding was already around in 1200 BC. Athens is often seen as the birthplace of democracy. That was the 5th century BC. But if you had a womb, you were not allowed to vote. You couldn't take office. You couldn't get a government position. All the philosophers from this time were men, or at least the ones that we know of. Maybe there were some women who were dressed up as men and pretended to be men, who knows? But women were not welcome in the elite. They weren't allowed to be leaders. Christianity is another interesting one, because Christianity, if you look at a lot of the basis of the Abrahamic religions like Judaism, Christianity, women aren't given the equality that we have, that we're looking for today. Say it's similar in Islam. And then in the USA, just a modern example, women actually couldn't get a credit card in the 60s. Their husbands had to sign for it. There are lots of other examples, but I'm going to go as a beautiful woman there between the walls. And another thing I'm just going to throw in here from the Quechua is that they believe that we are suspended between these two polarities, and it's the tension that is actually one of our ways that we evolve. And if you look at the yin yang that you see from Asia, it's a very similar principle. So these pictures here, this is going back to Paleolithic times. So Paleolithic times, and we still have, we have bones, we found skeletons, we have a lot of science to show how people lived. And there on the right, you see a woman. Obviously, it's a reconstruction of how a woman dressed, how a woman looked. You can see she's quite strong. She is definitely not a meek, I'm just going to stay at home and give up my job kind of woman. So already here we had more of gender equality. These are figurines. The one on the right is the Venus of Willensdorf, and this is actually thousands. Now on the top of my head, I think it's about 2,500 BC. On the left at the bottom, that is near Glastonbury, that is Avebury. So we have all these places on the planet that have these stones and these figurines that have been found. The stones, they're still not sure how they got there, but we know that it hasn't always been like this. So when you think we're surrounded by water, like, we're like fish in water, we only know the patriarchal system. That is recent history. We're now, I believe, reintegrating and remembering what was already here, the technology we already had. And that is one of the reasons why I went to Peru, because in Peru, that oral tradition has been kept alive from thousands of years. This is Neolithic times. So you see here, the women are working alongside the men. They have as well, they're dressed in a way that is all natural fabrics, of course, using teeth. There was a whole integrated society where there wasn't a top-down hierarchy the way we have it now. And here we see the agricultural revolution. So you still see this in a lot of modern day Asia and South America, the way the crops are grown. It's not industrial farming. The women are very much part of the workforce alongside the men. So I'm going to speed up a little bit. I can't actually see the time when I've got the slideshow open, but we're nearly at the end. So what happened, this is according to Marja Gimbutas, there was an invasion from the steppes when a lot of this feminine, a lot of the honoring of the fertility of the women was lost. I am not, this is the artist's impression. They look pretty fierce, don't they? I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but we see here there's a sort of time span. There's also another invasion from the Semitic tribes from the desert, who were also very much denigrating and silencing the goddess. Here we have a very mystical woman in the forest, the moon that is often related to the feminine, this receptivity. There we have a beautiful flower. So, I do believe we are coming to a time now, I'm going to stop the share, where we are able to remember those parts of our culture, parts of our gifts as women. And also we are able to take the best of everything that we've recently learned. It's not all bad in the man's world. I think competition, healthy competition, like you have it in sports, is a good thing. When we take the shadow of competition, which unfortunately a lot of us may have experienced in the workplace, I certainly did, then it becomes this very fearful environment. Everybody's afraid. So if you're at the bottom of the pecking order, you're afraid because there's someone on top punishing you. And if you're at the top of the pecking order, you're also afraid because somebody could take your position, because the next alpha male or female is going to come along and topple you off your pedestal. So that's just not a healthy, sane way to run a company or to lead. It's just not, or a country for that matter. I mean, look what's going on now in the east of Europe and Russia. So what actually we need, and I think the pandemic has shown us that, is we need safety. We need to feel safe. And fear is still one of the most destructive forces on the planet. So part of what I do on the retreats is to create a safe and nurturing environment for everyone present. So the mums come with their children, and when you allow people to feel safe, when you see them, when you witness them, when you elevate them, when you recognize their gifts, they begin to shine and shine, and they just keep shining, and they start collaborating and supporting each other, and they rise and they become the best version of themselves. And that is when I said at the beginning, I fell flat on my back. I fell so deep, I didn't know how I was going to get up. But a part of me knew that somewhere in there, it was directly related to the highest potential I had in me. And we all have that. Every single one of us has this incredible potential. So I invite you to really lean into this part of your own leadership. And leadership can have also, it can look many ways. It can just be leading your own life, leading your family, leading in a way that is inclusive, that is safe, that makes everyone who comes into your presence feel safe and nurtured. And that, I call it the HolyMama love field. It's like this, it's like this kind of energetic bubble. And I believe that we are now becoming more sensitive. We're becoming energetic beings. We already have these phones. I don't know where to put mine now, but we have these we have all this technology that is playing with energy, magnetism, where we are now, and we've said this on one of the panels, we need to experiment more. We need to be creative. We need to allow ourselves to try out different ways of doing things, break out of the box. You can't fit, and this one's from Les Brown, Raimonda, you can't fit a big life into a small box. And we all are here to live big, beautiful lives. So I am going to open now the chat. Oh, thank you. There are some links there. I was just going to put those. I'm going to put in the link to the masterclass, which is a freebie. And if there are any questions or anything, so that is the freebie that I have. That's a masterclass I recorded on recurring income. And another, I really think it's important that all women have something that they can make recurring income with. And all of us have that. There's something that all of us know really well, that if we were given 5 minutes to speak on a stage, we could just let rip. So you all have that, every one of you. And so this masterclass is talking about that, but also I have the 10% off. It's all about creating something that is uniquely yours and that you can monetize. It doesn't have to cost 5,000 euros. It can just cost 47, or it can cost 200. And there's a way that you can then, it's this thing of making money while you sleep. And we have a panel on this later, don't we, Raimonda?
Yes, we do. We're talking about financial freedom this evening on our panel. What a powerful talk. I have learned a lot, not only about the history, but how can we be more empowered. I loved hearing your personal story and how you didn't allow yourself to fall flat on the floor, and you continue to persevere. And that really shows your strength and our strength as women to keep getting up, keep finding a way forward, and how important leadership is. I love how you described leadership. It can be nurturing, it can be inviting, it can be, standing in our truth, standing in our ground. And I love having you on this platform. Iman said, yes, we need more women leaders to heal the world. And I totally agree. Just such an honor to have you on this platform today. Carolina said, you are inspiring, Claudia. Really love your energy and thank you for amazing and valuable presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a bit of a geek. I do like I like the sort of anthropological history. I think that probably would have been an anthropologist if I weren't doing what I'm doing. And the healing, I obviously, because I work in retreats, and healing is a big part of that. And I really feel that we're in this phase now, and who knows how long it's going to last, maybe 200 years, maybe 30 years of planetary healing, collective, so personal healing. So if you look at personal development, a lot of the talks we've had on here, whether it's really attuning your thoughts, not being caught up in the patterning of thoughts that aren't yours, that have been imposed on you, whether it's, you know, really leaning into how you are going to speak publicly, because this is so important for women, for us to share our voices, because part of the reason why it has been very much a man's world is because women haven't spoken up. We've been shut down. And this was also one of the things when I was flat on my back and I looked at my mother-in-law, and her advice to me was, you've just got to shut up. You know, you're just a troublemaker. And I was like, I am not going to shut up and be shut down. Women have been doing that for too many generations, and we've carried on. You know, we talk about generational wealth, but we also have a lot of generational healing to do, and to look at our own families, and it can be uncomfortable. So there's a lot of bypassing that's going on, because not everyone, and you know, you can never expect anyone to want to go on that journey, because it can be quite uncomfortable. It's really all about moving out of the comfort zone and going into those places that feel, again, it's like this portal. You don't know where it's going to take you, but you have to trust the process, because in transformation, there is always a breaking through. The breakdown doesn't last forever. There is always a breakthrough.
Yeah, I love that. Linda says generational healing. I love that. Carolina, me too. I love anthropology, especially the Latin America and indigenous communities. This talk is a healing talk, absolutely. Nira was asking where we can find a masterclass for recurring revenue.
So there's a link in the chat. If you go back up, I can just put it in again if you like. It's basically on the page. Hang on, I'll just put it in again. Hopefully that link is the right, yeah, it should be working, and if not, then you can just reach out to me, and I just put it in again.
So holymama.info/leaders-masterclass for anyone maybe watching this on replay. And I'd love to invite you to connect with Claudia on her social media channels, follow her. Your content is always very beautiful and intentional, and guiding women through the healing process and also leadership. I know you do retreats as well, so that's beautiful. If anyone wanted to inquire to Claudia about her work, her retreats, is there one you're doing this year?
One. I actually went, I'm in the sort of post-pandemic mode. I went from doing 13 retreat weeks a year to now this year we're doing HolyMama retreats. We're doing 7, and then I'm doing a few leadership retreats. So I just did one in Ibiza in February, and I will most likely do one in Morocco, and I really want to take a group to Peru, because that, you know, each location speaks to a different part of you. And and Bali as well. There are like these magic spots on the planet that have a special energy that really supports a certain type of retreat, whether it's specifically a leadership retreat, but also for women, because I think for women, and this is what happened to me, I mean, in this unfortunately did lead to the breakdown of my marriage, because the more I got empowered and the more I connected with my own essence, the more it was clear that we were just going on different paths, and he'd chosen a very different path to me. So when I went to Bali, I actually went to a women's conference in 2016, where 250 women showed up from all over the world. And it was like an activation. I mean, none of us actually came out of that the same as before. It was definitely a portal. And there it's something that is very hard to explain in retrospect, because I think sometimes, and this is the feminine mystery, there are some things that are just unknown, and it's just good that it stays like that. So what I love doing is getting women connected with that part of themselves and finding, and then bringing it to clarity, because in the real world we need a roadmap, we need a blueprint, we need a way to implement, to make, to embody those things, like to make them real. So to build a business, to see money on your bank account, to create products and services that people can actually buy and become part of our bigger vision and our mission and our purpose. So, you know, it often starts off as a whispering. It starts off as a dream. It's like that dreamscape world where you know that, and this happened to me when I was also in the media. You don't know exactly what you want, but you know what you don't want, and then you allow the whisperings to become louder and louder and clearer and clearer.
Oh, that feminine energy and the healing, as I say, every part of the world will connect differently to different people. And when we've done our last retreat back in 2019, before the shutdown in Ibiza, that was just so, Ibiza, I never really experienced it the way we did on this retreat. And it's so magical when you go to certain places and you feel the energy of that location. It really is magical and healing. And there are so many things to discover all around the world and discover ourselves, right? We would tune into our own portals, into our own energies. And as you say, you know, as we grow, we never come back to the same version of ourselves as we were before. Once we start that growth journey, we elevate. And sometimes, unfortunately, we outgrow people, outgrow relationships, outgrow our environment, and we need to find ourselves in a new place, right? When you plant a seed, you're not going to keep it in the same container. You know, once it starts to grow, you have to transport it into another container that is bigger, that has more space, because it has grown. It started to produce the fruits of the labor. So you are the same. You're a plant, you're a seed, you're growing, you're expanding, you need more space as you're evolving. And you just have to see yourself that, okay, I have outgrown this environment. I need more space to flourish.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, using the analogy of the seed, if you look at nature, there, everything, it's just so abundant. You know, that is, you know, you sometimes hear it's sort of new age talk about, you know, the universe is abundant, oh, and but what does that actually mean? But if you look at it, you don't have to look very far. If you just go into the forest, and especially in the jungle, you see all these different plants growing alongside each other, and the insects and the birds and the animals, and everything has this, it's like this symphony, this quite harmonious symphony. So this is what we're part of nature. We are that too. So we do have this natural state of growth and abundance that is, it's like being in the flow state. You know, you often use that with when an athlete is like really in the zone, or if you're a creative, an artist, and you're completely in the flow. It's that kind of expression. There's no limitations, there's no fears, there's nothing like stopping you or holding you back. You're just really in your element, going with your flow. And that, I believe, works in business just like anywhere else. It's like that synchronistic thing. You maybe some of you have been in that, where you're in the right place at the right time, and then the person shows up you were thinking of with exactly what you need, and it's all synchronistic. And sometimes, of course, we're not in flow. Sometimes we're out of alignment, and that's okay too. It just means, you know, let's just take a step back and slow down and check in with ourselves, and yeah, and reassess the environment. And this is this reciprocity again. It's this constant dialogue or conversation. The Quechua also believe that we can talk to the weather, we can influence the weather. I mean, they're completely convinced about that, by the way. And the Pacos, they're really, you know, the ones who are really on this path for generations, who've learned it from their great grandmother and father. They literally will go, okay, the rain's going to stop because I'm going to tell it to stop.
I love it. Well, ladies, we're nearly out of time. I want to say
Yes.
thank you for your participation, your engagement. I want to say big thank you to all of our ladies joining us today. So we've got Alexis, Angela, Carolina, Daniela, Delphine, Ellen, Aloha, Iman, Yabu, Jacqueline, Joe, Juanita, Carrie, Lindy, Mila, Nura, Shakita, Stardust Events, Sue, Tanya, and Valerie joining us today live. And for those of you watching on replay, I hope you get to connect with Claudia outside of this session. Next up, we have the wonderful Crystal Timberlake. Her story is absolutely beautiful, and her voice, I think you're going to love the next session. So I definitely invite you to be in part of the next session that we're starting in just 10 minutes. And her talk is on how to create the life of your dreams through the power of self-love. She has also been through a very transformational journey, and this particular talk means so much to her. So I hope you get to join us for the next session in just 10 minutes. So grab yourself something refreshing, maybe a bite to eat, and turn off any distractions. This is time for you to grow and heal and have that transformation. Nurture yourself. This is Friday. Take a bit of time for your own, for us to pour into you. Amazing session, so identified with it. Thank you, Jeb, who says, change is inevitable, growth is optional. Yes, amazing session. Thank you, what a great analogy. Thanks, everyone. So don't forget to connect with Claudia on her links. She just posted it. I wasn't sure if one of them didn't quite work. I think it was the top one. But if you need anything, if you have questions, if any of the links did not work for you, that's okay. Reach out to Claudia directly on her social media channels. Let her know how inspired you were by this talk. And you can find her across social media channels, HolyMama, and follow her along on her journey. And hopefully, I'd love to be part of one of your retreats. Sounds amazing. Thanks, Claudia. Appreciate you. Love you so much. And I honor all your contribution to this platform.
Thank you. Thank you so much. See you later.
See you all later in the next session. Bye for now.